The Passion of our Lord, according to Mathew, chapter 27, verses 11 through 54. Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus said, "You say so." But when he was accused by the chief priests and elders, he did not answer. Then Pilate said to him, "Do you not hear how many accusations they make against you?" But he gave him no answer, not even to a single charge, so that the governor was greatly amazed. Now at the festival, the governor was accustomed to release a prisoner for the crowd, anyone whom they wanted. At that time they had a notorious prisoner called Jesus Barabbas. So after they had gathered, Pilate said to them, "Whom do you want me to release for you, Jesus Barabbas or Jesus who is called the Messiah?" For he realized that it was out of jealousy that they had handed him over. While he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him, "Have nothing to do with that innocent man, for today I have suffered a great deal because of a dream about him." Now the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowds to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus killed. The governor again said to them, "Which of the two do you want me to release for you?" And they said, "Barabbas." Pilate said to them, "Then what should I do with Jesus who is called the Messiah?" All of them said, "Let him be crucified." Then he said, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Let him be crucified." So when Pilate saw that he could do nothing, but rather that a riot was beginning, he took some water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying, "I am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves." Then the people as a whole answered, "His blood be on us and on our children."
So he released Barabbas for them, and after flogging Jesus, he handed him over to be crucified. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the governor's headquarters, and they gathered the whole cohort around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and after twisting some thorns into a crown, they put it on his head. They put a reed on his right hand and knelt before him and mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" They spat on him and took the reed and struck him on the head. After mocking him, they stripped him of the robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him away to crucify him. As they went out, they came upon a man from Cyrene named Simon. They compelled this man to carry his cross.
And when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means place of a skull, they offered him wine to drink mixed with gall, but when he tasted it, he would not drink it. And when they had crucified him, they divided his clothes among themselves by casting lots. Then they sat down there to keep watch over him. Over his head they put the charge against him, which read, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." Then 2 bandits were crucified with him, one on the right and one on the left. Those who passed by derided him, shaking their heads and saying, "You who would destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross." In the same way, the chief priests also, along with the scribes and the elders, were mocking him, saying, "He saved others, he cannot save himself. If he is the King of Israel, let him come down from the cross now, and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God deliver him now, if he wants to. For he said, 'I am God's son.'" The bandits who were crucified with him also taunted him in the same way. From noon on, darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon. And about 3 o'clock, Jesus cried with a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani. That is, my God, why have you forsaken me? When some of the bystanders heard it, they said, this man's calling for Elijah. At once, one of them ran and got a sponge, filled it with sour wine, put it on a stick, and gave it to him to drink. But others said, wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to save him.
Then Jesus cried again with a loud voice and breathed his last. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks were split. The tombs also were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. After his resurrection, they came out of the tombs and entered the holy city and appeared to many. Now when the centurion and those with him who were keeping watch over Jesus saw the earthquake and what took place, they were terrified and said, truly, this man was God's Son. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Good news and bad news. The good news is the sermon's short today, I think, because the story really should and does stand on its own. It's so powerful. The bad news is there is a sermon. We love stories about good versus evil, don't we? Yeah. I mean, just look at some of the largest money-making movies in history. Think about the Star Wars series. What is it? Good against evil. The Hunger Games, good against evil. Men in Black, good against evil. Independence Day, good against evil. All those blockbusters, Captain America, X-Men, all those things. And we pay to see them. And what I want you to notice about all of them is when evil acts with violence to crush and conquer and subjugate the good, how does the good respond? In like manner, right? With violence, with war, striking out in vengeance and revenge. And we buy tickets to see that. Because that's kind of human nature, isn't it? When we're hurt, we want to strike out. When we're feeling crushed, we want to push back. We see that in the world all around us, whether it's relationships between individuals or between nations. The story today we just read, we heard an epic, actually a cosmic battle between good and evil. It's cosmic because it's between the powers of Satan and the powers of God on the other side. And we see that in this cosmic battle, this cosmic struggle for the life of the world, for our salvation, that to all appearances, when Satan rallies the forces of the Roman legion to carry out the crucifixion, because the Jews couldn't carry out capital punishment. So you notice the charge against Jesus is King of the Jews, so they were accusing him of being a traitor. That's why Pilate let it happen in part. But Satan rallied violence to crush Jesus. And how did Jesus respond? Just earlier in chapter 27 or 26, Jesus said, don't you know I could call down 12 legions of angels and my Father would send them? And that would be violence against violence, right? Just like in the movies. Just like human nature. But think about Jesus' ministry. What has he taught? What has he modeled? Forgiveness, reconciliation, love, mercy, compassion, healing. Think about the disciples he called, a tax collector who was a traitor, a patriot who wanted to kill the Romans. He crossed boundaries in talking with the Samaritan woman at the well and carrying the good news to that village. He touched the leper. He called Zacchaeus and ate at Zach's house. All those things. And then, if we think back in Mathew to the Sermon on the Mount, many scholars see the Sermon on the Mount as Jesus teaching us the ways of living in God's kingdom. The rules of God's kingdom, how God reigns. And so we look at that and listen to those verses. Jesus taught them there on the mountain. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. And so they persecuted Jesus. But notice, nowhere in there does Jesus say the powerful, the mighty, the rich, those who wield violence are in the kingdom. None of those ways are there. And yet, it's hard because we live in a world fraught with sin still, don't we? I mean, we talk about being saint and sinner at the same time. And our saint side knows what the values of Christ are. But our sinner side says when we're hurt, strike back, get even, conquer violence with violence or more power. Our world struggles with that. I mean, just think this past week when President Trump ordered missile attack on a Syrian air base in response to poison gas attacks. Violence with violence. It's hard because the people on each side of this disagreement are created in God's image. They're all, both sides, God's children. God's heart breaks, I'm sure. Just this morning in Palm Sunday in Egypt, 2 Coptic churches were bombed in the midst of their services. Christian churches. Violence. How do they respond? With love and mercy, I hope. So we struggle because we try to live as followers of Jesus, and yet we see things in the world that keep crushing us and threatening us, and we're not to be a doormat. But when we read the 2nd chapter of Philippians, we respond with humility as Jesus did. We engage in conversation. We engage to be reconciled as Jesus taught. And sometimes it doesn't seem to work out. But you know, on the story today, it ends on Friday with Jesus dead on the cross and laid in the tomb. The stone, boom, rolled into place. Satan thought Satan had won. We know Sunday's coming. And we know the rest of the story. Because we follow a God who is stronger than Satan, stronger than evil, stronger than death. And even as hard as it is, and we fall woefully short of doing this, even as hard as it is to respond with love and mercy, compassion, gentleness, humbleness, and so forth, the ways of the kingdom, we know because of the resurrection, that God's way, God's kingdom will triumph, will end up on top. It won't make a great, exciting Hollywood movie because there's no violence from God's side. Yet, you and I are bonded to Jesus' way in our baptism. We're joined, as Paul says, to Jesus' death on the cross, death to the ways of this world, death to responding violence to violence, sin to sin. And we're joined by the waters of baptism, by the power of the Spirit, to the same resurrection life as Christ has. We receive assurance of that in the bread and wine each time we receive it, so that we can go forth with that same power of life of Christ, forgiven, wiped away, to respond with grace and love and mercy. That's only possible because of God's Spirit within us. It's hard enough in interpersonal relations or small groups to do that. I can't imagine how incredibly hard it is for leaders of governments when they try diplomacy, and yet there's still sinfulness, still hidden agendas and all of that. And yet it can work. I mean, look at Gandhi in India, look at Martin Luther King Jr. in our country, look at South Africa. Violence, nonviolence, and peace overcame the violence in those places. So it can happen. But we know and we see that it's not easy. But you and I, we've had water poured over us, the Word proclaimed over us, Christ marked on our foreheads and in our hearts, so that we can go forth as living witnesses that the resurrection overcame the sin and evil and violence of the cross, and that it still does. You and I, because of Christ living in us, live, and we will overcome the world with forgiveness and grace and mercy. Amen.